Hey friends, welcome to Ask Dr. Betters. I'm Danielle and I'm here with my granddad, Dr. Chuck F. Betters. We are currently in the middle of a series called Deconstructing One's Faith. We are on question number 4. Here it is. I was homeschooled and involved in a local church, considered a good kid. During the pandemic, I was isolated and lonely, and I discovered a whole other world of beliefs. I questioned everything about God. Our world is so messed up. So many terrible things happen, including friends who have died from drugs, and one even committed suicide. You say God is sovereign and I can trust him, but how can I trust a God who doesn't stop pain? Sometimes I wonder if there is even a God.
Wow, the pandemic and the political climate of our day has divided many people from one another. It has caused some young people to walk away from the faith. I mean, to really walk away, not simply to deconstruct, but to actually reject their faith. There are a lot of young people today who were injured greatly by the pandemic. The pandemic hurt many. The politicians of our day didn't help the situation much. And so politically, we've watched as our nation has become divided, much of it over the pandemic, at least back in the early part of the 20s. We've watched as young people were isolated and forced to look into a mirror, and they didn't like what they saw. Some of them overdosed and killed each other and killed one another and killed themselves. And we watched as the pandemic took a tremendous toll upon American culture, upon the world. And we tend to say here at MARKINC Ministries that God is sovereign and you can trust him. You said in your question that we say God is sovereign and you can trust him. No, God says that. God's made that very clear, that he is a sovereign God, and because he is sovereign, which means all things work together for the good of those who love him. Romans 8:28 says just that. God says it, and therefore I believe it. God is sovereign and he can be trusted. What better time to learn to trust in a sovereign God than during times of crisis? When you read the Psalms, especially many of the early Psalms, the psalmist oftentimes raises questions. God, why this? God, why that? Why does the heathen rage? Why do evil men seem to get ahead when I try to do the right thing and I end up getting burned for it? The psalmist oftentimes raises that very question again and again and again. If he were to simply raise the question and stop there, the Psalms could become very depressing. But he never does stop there. He always ends those same Psalms of question with an answer. And what's the answer? Those Psalms always end with the psalmist worshiping God. He raises the question, he raises the concern, he expresses the doubt, and then he worships. That's how he resolves it. The more we worship God, the more we stay in fellowship with God's people, the more clear, the more realistic, the more with clarity God speaks to us. There's no substitute for this. For you to walk away from the church, for you to walk away from Christ, for you to reject the gospel, what's that going to do for you? How is that going to help? How will that draw you to a deeper faith? It'll draw you to a faith in something, but in what? In what do you now believe? In what do you now cast your understanding? In what do you now trust? In what do you now believe? If you reject Jesus, what's left for you? To whom shall we turn, the apostles said to him. You alone have the words of life. Only you possess the truth. When Jesus said he is the truth and the way and the life, what did he mean by that? I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man will see God but by me. How will you see God if you walk away from him? How will you see God if you no longer believe that he is sovereign and you can trust him? How will you believe God if pain around you has blinded your eyes to see the goodness of God? Pain is not new to him. Jesus promised us two things in this world. You will have eternal pain. You will have constant pain. And you will constantly be in trouble. And you will constantly suffer. In this life, you will have tribulation. But secondly, I have overcome the world. Trust in me. I have overcome the world. I have overcome your pain and your suffering. So when we say at Marking Ministries, God is sovereign and you can trust him, the best way to test that is in the middle of suffering. Not by running away from it, but by running toward it, by embracing it. In the early days of when we lost our son Mark to a tragic death, I used to say to people, and I still say today, learn to lean into the pain, not away from it. Lean into it. When we learn to lean into the pain, we are leaning into the bosom of Christ. That's what John did. John was the only one of the 12 who went to the foot of the cross with Christ. He leaned into the pain. He put on the surgical gown and he was covered with the blood of Christ in the midst of horrific pain. Where were the others? Cowering in fear, hanging on the end of a rope, running away from him. Where was Peter, denying that he even knew him? Where are you today? If you're in the middle of suffering and pain as the result of the politics of our day or the tragedies that came out of COVID, if you're looking to something else to satisfy you, you'll never find it. It's not there. It's not to be had. It's a dead end street. Where will you find joy and rest and peace? At the foot of the cross. Who, after the women, was the first to make his way to the tomb? John, the one who was at the foot of the cross, the one who didn't run away from the suffering, the one who was covered with the blood. He was the first who got there. He ran along with Peter. They both ran. John ran and got there first. The Bible tells us he leaned over and he looked into the tomb. And what did he see? Order, resurrection, faith. What did Peter do? He ran in ahead of John, and his own faith was in the midst of crisis. Oh yeah, a few days later, Peter would hear, Peter, do you love me? Do you really love me? Do you really, really love me? And Peter was brought to tears because he knew that Jesus was restoring him in his lostness. He was restoring him back to his leadership role. He was restoring him back to being a piece of that larger rock, which is Christ. Friend, if you're deconstructing your faith, and it's the result of pain and heartache that came as the result of the geopolitical events that have surrounded you in the past 10 years or so. Come to Christ. Come to understand how much He loves you, how much He desires you to find in Him the same kind of rest and peace that John saw when he bent over and peered into that tear and saw Christ standing there. Friends, I want to encourage you to stay with us in this series. It's a 5-part series with 5 questions that were raised by you. We've dealt with 4 of them. We have 1 more to go. So Danielle, why don't you tell us what our 5th question is?
Absolutely. Within the first weeks of marriage, I knew my husband was abusive. I lived with the abuse for years, and I've hidden it because I don't want people to think badly of him, especially his boss. He is very charming in his work and socially. I try not to trigger him, but I'm exhausted and afraid. I was taught God hates divorce, so I feel like that is not an option. But is this what God wants for me?
Well, that's a tough question to address, and we're going to deal with that the next time we're together, especially in the context of suffering, human suffering that maybe is secret suffering, secrets that no one else sees. You know what you're going through. Others may around you not understand what you're going through. Maybe they don't know the kind of pain that you're in. And we'll address that the next time we're together. I hope this series is proving to be helpful to you.